Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Tread a Path podcast, the podcast from Kufi Productions, where we explore the inspiring journeys of Muslim professionals across diverse industries. I'm your host, Salman Hassan, and each week we sit down with remarkable individuals who are making their mark in their chosen fields. We highlight their successes, their challenges, and their journey, as well as examining corporate accountability and uh, and actionable advice they'd like to offer on career advancement, ethical navigation to those who want to tread that path. And as a reminder to our listeners, you can find the show notes, resources, and ways to contact or connect with our guest speakers in the Tread a Path archive in kufiproductions.com. So today, I'm honored to be joined by Nida Syed. Nida is the founder of Caravan Tales. She's worked in the airport planning industry before transitioning to cloud-based software field. She has a love for the arts and creativity, as well as baking, which led her to creating this travel company called Caravan Tales and pursuing baking full time. So with that, Nida, assalamu alaikum, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So before we dive into your story, tell us, what is your favorite dish to bake and a place you'd like to visit if we had all the money in the world?
My favorite dish to bake. So these days I am a full-on bread baker. So this is using naturally leavened breads. There's countless ways to leaven breads, but the one that people are probably most familiar with is using just like a starter.
Yes.
So I love creating different types of breads, and breads spanning so many different cultures. So I would say that's my favorite at the current moment to bake.
Okay.
And the place that I would visit, honestly, right now my heart really wants to visit Saudi Arabia. I want to visit Medina. I had a short layover to perform alhamdulillah Umrah on the way back from my trip to Pakistan. I had less
Alhamdulillah.
than 24 hours, so I quickly was able to do an Umrah, but I would love to just go through, learn the history of the places that we learn in our seerah and so on. So I would love to spend time there.
Mashallah. No, that's great. That's awesome. And very impressive that you were able to squeeze in Umrah in that time span. Any amount of things can go wrong during that process, right? And God forbid if anything gets lost or stolen or misplaced or whatever, then that only adds on to the length of time you're there. But that's great that you were able to perform Umrah on your way to Pakistan.
Alhamdulillah.
So that's great. So can you give our listeners a brief overview of what you do currently with Caravan Tales?
Yeah, with Caravan Tales. So Caravan Tales is what I like to call, I take people on adventures. So this is a company that was born at the end of 2023. At the end of 23, I launched it, said, hey, this is my new adventure company. And 2024 was the first year that I started taking people on trips. Basically, how it works is I announce the location, the location, as well as the dates of the adventure. And what people will do is it's open to people all over the world, brothers, sisters, all over the world. And if they're available those dates and they'd like to come on the adventure, they sign up, they register, and then we go as a group. I'm their guide. And alhamdulillah, my husband also will accompany me on these trips because I have brothers and sisters who are coming.
Yes, that makes
So it's
sense.
really nice to have him, and he gets to experience, of course, meeting these beautiful people. So far, I've only had people from the United States, all over the United States, but inshallah, hoping to bring people from all over the world and hear their stories and so on. So these are curated adventures, and the goal behind it is for them to be a much deeper level of travel than maybe more modern day tourism allows for, where it feels like it's more touch and go, sort of the Instagram experiences. This is really about getting to know that country through its people, through its literature, culture, arts, but also a much deeper understanding of the people that you're traveling with. Because throughout all of these trips, these are small group trips. Throughout all of these trips, people are coming with various loads of baggage, whether it's this dealing with insecurities into their adult life that were never addressed, I guess, in younger years, that are really coming out and they want to talk about it. Or, I've had people come onto these trips who are dealing with very, very heavy grief. There are heartbreaks. There are just, people who are maybe feeling stagnant in life. There's so many different circumstances that people are coming onto these trips from. and I wanted to give them the opportunity to have a reset through travel. And so that's ultimately what Caravan Tales is about.
It's wonderful. No, mashallah, it's great that you're offering a service to people that's beyond vacationing, right? That's beyond just traveling, but also providing meaning to those who want it, right? Do you want to announce where you're taking the people to the next adventure?
Yes, so inshallah, I will be leading my third trip to Japan, inshallah, this April. So it'll be April
Nice.
26th, May 3rd. And I'm particularly excited about this experience because I will be working with my friends that I've made throughout the years on the ground. These are both Muslims and non Muslims who are very passionate about really helping the world understand what Japan is about through their lens.
Yeah.
And so these are Japanese converts, these are even just community builders and artists and so on. And it's a culminated sort of effort. And I'm very, very excited about this experience because I really do feel like this will be a much deeper way to learn about Japan. Because what I've seen mostly about Japan on social media is like the same sites. It feels like
Yeah.
every social media video promotes the exact same sites, and it doesn't feel as there's like a deeper connection. And I'm really hoping to bring that deeper connection, especially with the friends. I like to call them our Japanese friends of the caravan who are going to be part of this
Nice.
experience. Inshallah.
Nice. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the world is vast, right? And there's like, we on this earth we have a limited time, and with that time, we should try to learn as much as we can from, the with the people that we share this world with, right? And yeah, you only get a snippet of it or a sample of it on Instagram or social media, and that happens to be the same sample repeated or recycled over and over again. So I definitely like your approach about, curating these adventures to cover other places and parts of the world and their people that inhabit it to make sure that they get an understanding of what the world looks like over there as well. My question to you is what initially drew you to travel planning or curating these adventures in the first place? What about it that made you feel like, oh my gosh, I this is my calling or this is something I really want to do?
I would say this effort came from three different paths. Number one was my experience. There is an organization called Dean Intensive, and they used to do these rihla trips. These were 3 week long trips, or at least when I went, they were 3 week long trips where there was focus on learning aqidah, there was fiqh, and there was tasawwuf. And that experience, I went about 10 years ago. I went in 2015 and I went in 2016. And I went in 2016 as you could say, a sisters coordinator of sorts. And that experience transformed my relationship with religion so much. And I remember thinking distinctly at that time that travel has the ability to be transformational, especially, and that was also the time when I learned that your suhbah or finding good suhbah really can transform your life for the better. And it's vastly important, right? These are all inputs into who we are. And the sisters, as well as the brothers that I was around, they were such souls that were just yearning for Allah. And being around them gave me a much more colorful look of Islam. And that was one of the things that drew me to wanting to start a travel company, although I didn't know it at the time. It was something that I just always kept in my heart. And then there is another component, which was my baking journey. And baking is something that I have done since I was a kid, but it really transformed, I would say, starting in 2023 at the beginning. And that year, I picked up a book called The Sourdough School. And this is a book written by an author who's based in the UK. And she was talking about having awareness of making breads with local grains. And it sent me down this complete rabbit hole, I guess, of wanting to explore baking with local grains because I had always purchased commodity grain, which is, the type of grains that you would just get at the supermarket.
Sure.
But I never learned about, I guess, what it would be like to purchase grain locally and what the environmental impacts of buying local and so on. So I got more into that field and started to incorporate that more into my baking, which ultimately led me down this path of conscious living. This is a lot of different
Right.
happened over the course of time, but it made me start to realize that there are impacts to how we consume food. And even on a religious level, when I go and attend retreats, there was one I attended by Maqasid Institute, which is pretty close to where I live. It's in Pennsylvania. And they had a retreat that covered Ihya Ulumuddin, one of the books of Imam al-Ghazali, which is the Ihya Ulumuddin, and one of the books addresses the dangers, I guess, of overconsumption and how our modern lifestyles are all about overconsumption and
Yes.
availability of food. And it made me think a lot about the fact that a lot of us do live kind of more sedentary lives. A lot of us work on the computer all day. We're eating more than we need to. So people have to go to the gym to burn off all that food that they don't really even need to eat and so on. So all of that to say is the baking world led me to this path of conscious eating and conscious living from an environmental perspective, from a spiritual perspective, what that does to you. So that was another path of the experiences I wanted to create were to introduce conscious living. The third path was theater. Now, theater is also something that I had done. My mom really encouraged me to do it in middle school because she could just tell I had this yearning to be in the arts.
Okay.
And so she encouraged me to pursue theater. And with theater, it's not something that I do, unfortunately, much anymore because it's, harder to find roles that I can actually audition for
Sure.
and
Sure.
maintain my values and so on. But if I find a role, I'll try to audition for it. But what theater had taught me and the craft of acting taught me a very powerful lesson about empathy. Because with theater, with acting, when you are taking on a character, be it a villain, you're learning their motivations, their background, their childhood, everything that affected them to what they are today. It almost humanizes them. I obviously won't go
Mhm.
down the path of, like humanizing a villain and so on, but all that to say is the acting experience is all about empathy. It is about deep connection. It is about deep understanding of a human being. And I thought, imagine what this world would be like if we really got to know people at that level. And we could be much more at peace if we understood the motivations behind people, their background, and so on. So I loved that aspect of acting. And I wanted to also bring that into Caravan Tales from a deep connection, learning about a person perspective. And then what I'm trying to do through my social media is really bring out that theatrical side and storytelling side. But those are like the three paths that led to the creation of Caravan Tales. So a few different things there.
No, that's great, and I love the way you broke it down into like pillars almost, right? Of how Caravan Tales was created, or the creation of the Caravan Tales, and what inspired you to set it up the way that you intended. I love especially the incorporation of theater and storytelling because a lot of traveling is learning stories from other people from other parts of the world. And when you mentioned, theater, in my mind, I was thinking, a lot of people who don't have the privilege or luxury of traveling, oftentimes their access to the rest of the world is through the screen, right? Through films, through media, through the television, right? And so having actors portray not only the characters, but the setting and the places that they are acting in, right? If the setting was in Japan or the Netherlands or South Africa, right? That also has to be portrayed in the right manner as well, right? And that also has to lead to the accurate storytelling of those people and of that place that you're portraying, right? So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. And we'll dive a little bit into that later on in the discussion. But I want to come back to the beginning of your story about what were you mentioned a little bit about some of your early influences, right? Being you said Rihla, right, and being in those journeys. Are there any particular people or individuals that also kind of contributed to the journey that you're in now, the path that you're in now? You mentioned your husband being one of them, right?
Hmm.
Were there any other individuals in particular or groups of people, if you will, that helped you kind of get along to this journey?
Absolutely. The first person that came to well, there's a few people that come to mind when it comes to this. I live in a very the area that I live in right now is very, very corporate. It is very bureaucratic area. I'm close to the capital, Washington D.C. So the circles that I'm around are mostly people who work corporate jobs, which is not to say it's a bad thing, but as
Sure. Yeah.
someone who was since childhood an aspiring artist, trying to navigate and wanting to pursue a path that was different than people around me was very difficult. And strangely so, now that I'm here at this spot now, it feels strange to say it, but at the time that was very much my reality was I couldn't imagine a life outside of what everyone around me was doing. And again, I'm not going to say that that's not a noble path because I think it very much is a noble path to want to create a secure and comfortable lifestyle for your family, but my path was I always wanted to be an actress when I was younger. I mean, I wanted to be an artist for so long. I wanted to be in film. I really wanted to get in that field, but there were so many mental blockers because I had no one to look up to in that sense. And the first introduction that I had, I remember very, very clearly. This was actually during COVID time. Remember, there was sort of a climax in my distress of, I really want to do this thing, but I don't know how to do it. I want to do film. I want to do acting. I want to do something creative. I just don't know what that is. And I remember crying to Allah that night. And I remember I went to sleep and I woke up the next morning and there was a text on my phone. And it was an invitation to an iftar. And this iftar was um, hosted by this these two people that are now my very, very close friends. And their mission is actually to build community in this area, create accessible programming for people they really gave me the sense of belonging, but the biggest thing that came from that was I met these 2 people who didn't feel bound by the paths that were seemed like it was the only path around me. They kind of pursued their own path, and they were making it work, and they taught me this very valuable lesson that you don't need to have it all to be happy or to feel content.
Yeah.
That
Right. Right.
there was even this story that we went over by my dear brother. His name is Saad. Saad and Najiha, these are my 2 very big influences in life. And he had us read this story about a person. The moral of the story was that how much does a man really need? How much space does a man really need? And that really resonated with me. They also held programming for like poetry retreats, for example. There was this one program that was led by my brother Saad, but also there was another brother, Hassan, who shared his love for Iqbal poetry. And there was one line that really, yeah, it really stuck out in my mind. He said, "We're all running towards something, but we don't know what that is." And that also really resonated with me because I was very much in that space of, I felt like I was running with everybody to this place that I don't even know where am I even running to? Like, why am I doing this? There was this immense fear of being vulnerable and putting myself out there that these individuals just took and just tossed off the side.
You're right.
And I needed someone to show me that. And then there was another brother who I met through the masjid. We have a coffee shop that's in our masjid, and it's like a community space. And I remember feeling like when I met this brother he was a baker, and he also he is a baker, and he created films, and he also did storytelling, and he linked the 2 together. And he also pursued this path that was very unconventional. And I remember when I met him, I just felt like, okay, it is possible to do this. This brother actually ended up being my first registrant for the Caravan Tales trip. Alhamdulillah.
Nice.
Alhamdulillah,
Alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah. So all that to say is these people they showed me that it's possible to do this. It just takes bravery, it takes courage, and just jump and be fearlessly yourself. That's not to say that it's going to be easy because the past few years have been probably the most difficult, but that's not the point. The point is it is possible. It just requires a little bravery and constant communication with Allah. And just, my husband is very, he keeps me in check, like make sure that every move that I'm making, every decision I make with Caravan Tales, is it in alignment with what Allah has willed for us, what pleases him and so on. So of course my husband's very an important influence and all that, but these were the three people that really showed me my path.
No, that's great, mashallah. And it's, I always say this, like, it's super important to have people to have your back and provide the level of support so you can comfortably, achieve milestones that you never thought of achieving, right? For yourself. Speaking of dreams, right? Um, oftentimes that quote that you mentioned just a little bit ago about, like, being in a race that, you're a part of, but you don't know where you're heading towards, or the destination, right? And I feel like a lot of people are in that, especially those from the corporate spaces, right? It's great. Again, same as you were saying, it's not to say that having a corporate background and lifestyle is it's not good. It's very respectable for sure to be able to support your family and your lifestyle. However, I've heard so many people from from the corporate spaces that they feel a loss of, or a lack of purpose, or they feel a sense of, like, they don't know what the end goal is. They clock in, they get to work, they do their tasks and come back home, and be with their family and so forth, right? And after a couple of years of doing that, then they feel like, what's next, or they don't understand quite what their destination is. But alhamdulillah, some people do figure that out, which is great. But sometimes that's often met with challenges, right? So my follow-up question to you now is, what challenges have you faced in your path to, creating Caravan Tales, and your path to trying to becoming an actor, or getting into the film industry? Was there anything in particular that really maybe set you back a little bit, but then through your faith, you kind of persisted?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I have to remind myself constantly is I have a tendency to become attached specifically to people, but reminding myself that all of this, all of what I'm doing is a process, it's a journey, and the destination is not so much the emphasis as it is the journey itself. And what I have to remind myself is to not attach myself to the results of what happens, not to attach my any sort of, I guess, well-being and so on to the success of this company. This is me trying to do the best effort that I possibly can do and leaving the results to Allah, because at the end of the day, risk, whether it be money, whether it be number of people who register, whatever it is, all is from Allah. And how amazing is it that we can actually put the pressure off ourselves and say, like, okay, we can do our best. We can schedule whatever we want on those days. But at the end of the day, it's on not really up to us. It's up to Allah, right? People have brilliant artwork and they'll never see success in a dunyai sense. Whereas some people, it's not written for us. It is about us making our best effort and enjoying that journey part, which sounds like fluffy and all of those things. It's very hard in practice. And
Yeah.
that is something that I've constantly had to tell myself for the past however many years now. What, 2 years now? I guess it's 2024 if we count that as being the
You're right.
first year of marketing.
Right.
It is that constant reminder of that. And a big part of the challenge also is navigating the social media space and making sure it's in alignment with what my values are, because social media to me is a means of getting the word out, getting this opportunity out to people, but I never really wanted to be a content creator. I didn't like the idea of, being too personal about my personal life and so on. It was just not
Sure.
for me. I
Right.
wanted to stay as objective, I guess you could say, as possible, make it more focused on what the company is about and so on. But a lot of advice I was getting was the content creation path and creating a bunch of content and just pushing it out there. Whereas I wanted to create art and hoped that would attract people to come onto the trips. But what I'm finding is one of the biggest challenges with that is that the algorithm doesn't so much favor that type of content. Is that yes, you could create aesthetic things, but really what it favors is creating those quick, snappy, just get your attention in a few seconds, move on to the next
Whatever
thing.
is trendy. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly, and that was the advice I kept getting again and again. In my heart, I don't know if I was being stubborn, but in my heart, I just didn't feel it just didn't sit right with me. I wanted to believe that there was a way to make it, and I'm still navigating that path of how do I balance the 2 where the word still gets out because, of course, I still would want to n let people in the world know about this opportunity, but at the same time being authentic in what it is that Caravan Tales is teaching. It's teaching conscious living, but if I'm constantly on the phone, like, engaging and, not taking the
Sure.
time to be with family and so on, then I just go down the rabbit hole and it doesn't feel right to me, and I still have to navigate that part of it, and it's been 2 years in, and I'm still struggling with that a bit, if I'll be honest, but is finding that balance between getting the word out, but also not spending all my time and going the influencer route, which is not really for me, unfortunately.
No, that's I think most founders can relate to what you just said right now about like finding the balance between what you really are passionate about and what you entered the space for versus some of the, I guess, necessary or administrative, parts of the job, right? Where you don't necessarily enjoy doing that, but it's one of the things that you kind of have to do to be able to do what you really truly are passionate about, right? Which is curating adventures and uh, the storytelling aspects of traveling. So, I was just thinking about this the other day about like, you were just mentioning about like the algorithm not favoring, certain stories or narratives, right? But they keep wanting to push certain content out because it's what's trendy. It's what the decision makers of the Instagram and the Facebooks of the world deem to be most successful. Do you find yourself constantly wanting to like having that urge to say like, okay, maybe I should just alter my content and the way I portray what Caravan Tales is about to be able to at least get the word out. And then later on, I'll tailor it back to how I imagined it so that at least now that I have certain metrics met, or do you stay grounded and say, no, I'm going to stay true to my purpose. And, this is the kind of content I will keep on pushing out no matter how tough or the road gets.
Yeah, I would say option 2 was definitely the road I was going for the past 2 years. I said, I believe in this. I believe that this is the way to go, and I wanted to stick to what I believed in. But then I started to realize that there is a potential for the 2 to meet in some way. Because at the end of the day, this is not about me. This is about wanting this experience for people. This is not a self-serving venture. This is very much something that I want to get out. And if it's not going to get out by ways that I want in like my artsy way, then I might have to tailor it. Maybe I still do that, but maybe they're shorter videos or maybe they're, because for example, volume of content is something that I very much struggle with, especially because I am doing a full-time job.
You're right.
And
Yep.
that's too, like a physical job where I can't be on my desk. So that has made me realize that my desire to get this out into the world and hope people find out about it might find a balance between the 2, basically.
Yeah.
I still haven't struck that balance yet. I still think I'm figuring that out, but that is something that I for sure struggle with because even a sit down video where you're just talking into the camera does require some thought. And there are some days I'll be honest where I don't really even know what to say. I'll think of if someone asks me a question about the Japan trip, I'll usually make that into a content piece like, oh, somebody asked me, can moms come onto these trips? So, for example, I'll make a video about that. So, they're kind of giving me content ideas from that. But another thing is that there was a gathering that I attended from Tanweer Institute, which I consider a sister of Maqasid Institute, that's based in the area that I'm in. And I remember one of our sheikhs who's based here, he was handed the microphone to say a few words. And I remember he held the microphone and he said, wow, this is a big responsibility. And probably to him, it didn't mean a lot. But for me, it meant a lot because imagine all of us have microphones, right? Our phones that can broadcast anything we say out to the world. So making sure that whatever I'm saying will not mislead people That's one of my biggest fears is you don't wanna accidentally mislead someone. And, so there are a lot of things to just kinda keep you in check. Not to, like, overwhelm anybody, but these are things that went through my mind is making sure that I just have to meet a balance somewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm still on that journey.
And not to make things more complicated or complex, but now in a world that we live, right, with so many atrocities and things that are happening, for example, in Gaza and Sudan, we as content creators, right, at the end of the day, we are considered content creators, and those with a platform, we have another responsibility of exposing the truth or sharing the truth or using our platforms to speak out for those who are voiceless or underrepresented. How does that become a challenge for you? You know, Caravan Tales, right? And I'm sure you've had this question in your mind for a long time. How do you incorporate that responsibility to your organization, to your cause, to your movement, while still maintaining that level of curation for the kind of stories that you wanna tell for Caravan Tales?
Yeah, since I've become a little bit more active on social media now. I think my posts before were very sparing. Maybe I do once a week and so on. Maybe I'll post stories here and there. But I don't think we should shy away from that responsibility. And we have many creative ways to expose the truth of what's happening in the world. So occasionally if I post a story, that's very I don't even want to call it baseline of what you can do. But in the way that I wanna carry the stories, for example, if there is a place that we visit that highlights the struggles of people are going through around the world, is I want to be able to do that in a storytelling format, because storytelling has power to influence us, even, like, the way we create that story, the music that we might choose to include in that story, it all influences us. And I'm hoping that with the storytelling path is I can share the truths of this world in a way that resonates with people. And I'm hoping my approach is more of the humanizing approach of that we are all people and living in this world. And I that's kind of the approach that I want to take with sharing the truths of what's happening in the world. I don't want to undermine what movies, like films, can do to impact our desire to do something, right? Like, especially when you see films like No Other Land. There was also, I'm forgetting the name. I think it might be called Encampments. So I'm speaking specifically about the struggles in Gaza. I think it's called Encampments, but it had to do with a college. It's a film that covers
The
the college.
encampments, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, encampments. So it stirs something inside you. And of course, I've been hearing about this issue for so long, and I'm very familiar with what's happening. But it's just when you see that film and when you see the footage, it does something else to you. So I'm hoping that with this platform that hopefully I can do it in a similar sense where it's the storytelling, the visuals and so on, and in a creative sense.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. In that line of thinking, what are ways that individuals can advocate for more accountability, personally and, in the corporate life as well, right? I know you've been away from the corporate life for some time and, doing Caravan Tales, but, to some degree, everyone should be doing their part as far as like, sharing the stories and spreading word of, people, those who cannot share their stories, right? Whether that's natural or man-made. Besides storytelling in the form that we're kind of normally used to, can you think of other ways that maybe people should try to advocate for a better world?
I'll be honest, for a better world, if we were talking for a better world, we need to show our beauty. Like this Islam that we've been given. Oh, like if you learned it the way I feel like the way I've learned Islam, even down to let's even just take Imam al-Ghazali's Ihya al-Ulumuddin that covers every aspect of life pretty much. There's even a book just about travel. In that book itself, it talks about when you're traveling, for example, you need take provisions for yourself, but also for some for the people that you're traveling with. What does that mean? It means that our Islam is not about us. It's not about me. It is about us. It is
Right.
taking care of each other and so on. So when we expose people to those aspects of Islam that you don't have to be Muslim to show these characteristics, but this is what our Islam teaches us. If we as Muslims show those characteristics that we've been taught in our deen, then that, of course, is starting, right? The people that we're surrounded around, it starts to beautify our deen. Our Muslim coworker is the one who's always bringing us food. He's always the one who's taking care of us, who's standing up for us. And especially if we're talking about what you can do in your workplace, be excellent in what you do in your workplace. Don't be the one who's coming late to meetings. Don't be the one who is not getting their work done on time, right? If there's issues, if you getting your work done on time, you address it. You say, hey, I'm having some problems and issues. Talk to those people directly, but show ihsan and excellence in your work. That is one way we can really start to make the change, because I feel like talking about it does have impact, but if we're really trying to make impact, I feel like it's showing our best character as possible. And it is almost like putting pressure on yourself, but in the best way, right? Because you are the carrier of your deen. You need to show in a work environment, for example, that you're the one who's always going to be on time to meetings. You're the one who is going to be the one treating your teammates well, the good leader, the one who, when they submit an assignment, it's done very well. And if they can't do it well, then they're getting the resources.
Right.
Yeah, those type of things I feel like are things that anyone can even implement starting tomorrow. It's one of those things that we really need to start off with, is beautifying Deen through our character.
Then a few days ago, I was listening to a lecture by Sheikh Yasir Qadi, and he was saying, or someone asked him, "Do we need more scholars?" I think that was a question. I can't remember it quite 100%, but I think that the question was, "Do we need more religious scholars?" But I specifically remember his response, which was, "We don't need more scholars. Maybe one out of 1,000 people we can be go into religious studies, but the rest of the 999 people need to be experts within their fields and their industries, right? So that we can show to the world what being a Muslim in their respective discipline looks like, right? And we can use that and show ihsan through the work that we do. And through each discipline we can show that we can deliver and practice our deen, and in a way it's a form of dawah to those who are non-Muslims and looking upon us as examples of humanity, that no matter what occupation that you have, or what religion you follow, or your socioeconomic background, whatever it is, right? The way that you carry yourself forward, that's the Islamic way. That's the way of our deen has taught us, and the Prophet ﷺ has taught us. So I 100% agree with your comments and your sentiments about no matter where you are in life, do so with ihsan, with sincerity, and to the best of your ability, so that in and of itself is a way to show the world that Muslims and people of faith, this is how it should be. And inshallah, through that, we, alhamdulillah, I mean, since October of 23, a lot of people have converted to Islam, and that's not because of what we are saying, but how we conduct ourselves and how we stay steadfast and patient through atrocity, through hardship, through whatever calamity that they face. This is the way of life almost. So appreciate your comments on that. And so I want to pivot a little bit, kind of circling back to Caravan Tales. As you know, being in the United States or in the Western societies, um, hesitation towards traveling because of the government imposed laws and regulations, right? I'm curious, how does that impact your work as far as curating the adventures and traveling? Does that make it challenging for you, or is there really no impact? How has that affected you lately?
Is that question in regards to people's ability to travel, maybe based on their visa status? Is that the question?
Yeah, that, and also like, some people have just a natural fear of just traveling anyways, right, to different parts of the world because of the tensions that exist, right, and so forth. So yeah, all of that.
Yeah, I'll address the part about people just nervous about traveling in general. I haven't encountered, because the countries I've chosen so far, Japan, Iceland, and Norway. Pakistan has been very, very high on my list for some time because that's my ethnic background.
Sure. Yeah.
And I would love to explore that. But those areas at the moment, inshallah, never is a concern, haven't been so high on the safety risk part. But in terms of people's concerns about travel, I get that a lot. I get people, actually, most of the people who end up coming with caravan tails are ones that haven't ventured out in a long time or maybe never. I also get people who have never been internationally. And for whatever reason, their heart inspired them. Allah had willed for them to come on to this particular trip. And the biggest thing for those people is that my role is to understand where they're coming from. That a lot of these people will ask questions that seem baseline, but you really have to understand. This is where theater comes in, right? You have to understand that these people might not have had a passport until this year. So they really need to be walked through the process of when you go to the airport, you're going to go through a security. They're going to ask you to remove in some instances, they're going to ask you to remove your shoes, your laptop, so on. Get it. And I'll walk their hand through that process. What are things they need to pack? So I'll include like a packing list. We have a pre-departure meeting where I basically yap and tell them everything that they need to know before leaving. And I get questions constantly like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing and then it's just about understanding that it's just their first time doing it, or it's been a very long time and they need someone to just walk them and hold their hand through the process, which is, I'm happy to do that. So, what happens, subhanAllah, is when people make that jump and when people decide from their courage and from Allah's will, they make that jump. And I actually had an instance where there was a brother and his daughter who came onto a trip and they came on every subsequent trip that year. So they joined the Japan 2025 trip. They were like, I can finally do this travel thing. I really believe in myself. And they came on to the Iceland trip that was in the summer, and then they came on to the Norway trip that was in the winter time. So sometimes it's just about having that courage and making that jump. And I've seen people's worlds open. There was someone who joined my very, very first caravan trip who used to travel more pre-COVID. Then COVID happened. A lot happened during that time. A lot of fears for everyone was alive at that time. And then they ventured out and they were really like at home most of the time. And then they just decided to come on to this Caravan Tales trip. It was a brand new organization. Come on to this Caravan Tales trip, venturing out with complete strangers. I mean, just people who exist on cyberspace, and ended up, they had an amazing time. And they even said that the world just felt like it opened up to them. I'm not attributing that to myself or Caravan Tales. I'm saying that sometimes you just need to take that leap of faith and you don't end up regretting it because it opens doors for you. You realize that you are capable of doing so much that you might be fearful of. There was even, I remember I went to my local masjid and our Imam Majid, who's local to us, he was talking about how to combat fear is to actually face it, right? The more you run away
Yeah.
from it, the more fearful that thing becomes. So it's kind of that concept of like they just needed to go through it and then they realized things will get sorted. I can figure it out. Everything will be fine. So I love seeing that people feel empowered once they finally make a jump.
Alhamdulillah. That's great. And I, I really hope that more people travel or have the ability to travel because that's one of the best ways you can honestly uh, do for yourself, right? And being a better person and learning more about the world. It's just immersing yourself in those environments. Yes, there's a certain amount of learning you can do from books and websites and materials, so forth, but there's nothing quite like experience it firsthand in the country that you're visiting or the people that you're going to visit in those respective places. So that's wonderful, and thank you for sharing that. As we kind of wrap up, with our discussion here, I want to ask you, some question about advice and what you hope to achieve. So how do you define? So I have a two-parter for you. How do you define success for yourself beyond the financial metrics or the dunya metrics, if you will, and what legacy do you hope to leave for this world?
Those are big questions.
Yes.
Mashallah. Mashallah. Well, if we're talking success outside of a dunyai sense, anything that gives me more an understanding of myself, and not for a self-serving purpose, but for the purpose of knowing myself is a path of knowing Allah. And if that to me is what I desire more than anything, is to unlock the secrets of this universe, of the purpose of our creation, and empower people with the same, not to be selfish with my Islam, that Allah has given me so many pathways to learn His beautiful deen through Rehla, through Maqasid, through all the programming that I even locally, Tanweer Institute, Adam Center, so on. Every resource that I've used has given me this beautiful jewel that is Islam, the teachings of Islam. And I'm hoping that with Caravan Tales, I also bring on non Muslims. And because especially in my baking space, I interact with non Muslims quite a bit. And these are people in this particular field of baking, where we're working with local grains and farmers and millers and so on, are people who are very earth conscious, and they're beautiful souls. And often some of them will tell me about how they're looking for deeper connection or community or a deeper purpose to life. They'll ask these very existential questions, and questions that I won't say I have answers to, but at least Islam gave me a little bit of a foundation of, that I feel would be very selfish if I kept it to myself. So I'm hoping that through Caravan Tales or whatever venture it is that I do, that this deen is shared amongst people, its teachings are shared amongst people, and that to me is what success looks like. Is sharing this gift and myself unlocking the knowledge and secrets and everything about the attributes of Allah, and also knowing ourselves. And then the legacy.
The legacy, yes,
Well, I
that's a
guess
big one.
would that kind of be my legacy? Well, gosh, I would hope that the legacy is ultimately is someone who was lighthearted in their pursuits, yet groundbreaking in beautifying the deen, right? Is like lighthearted yet impactful. Hopefully I don't say that out of vain or vanity, but I do hope that my time on this earth is spent by spreading this gift of Islam in a way that touches people's hearts.
That's a great legacy. Inshallah, may Allah enable you to achieve it and allow you to leave that for the world, inshallah. So before we wrap up, I want to ask you, are there specific ways that people can support your cause, Caravan Tales? What's the best way to reach out to you? Get advice from you, ask you questions about Caravan Tales, or just in general? What's the best way to contact you?
The best way to contact me would be email. So it would be admin@caravantales.org is the best way to reach out to me. I'm also on social media platforms. So I'm running the Instagram page. So if people want to send me a DM there, I'm responsive on there. Sometimes they hide those message request things, but sometimes I see them. Most of the
Yeah.
time I see them. I have to make sure I check them because, don't want to make sure anyone's missed out there.
Yep.
But I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram. I post the same things on TikTok and Facebook as well. But I would say the best way is probably through email, especially. And I'm also happy to have meetings with people or get on a call with someone if they wanted to ask me a question, or even if it's about the trip. I like getting on calls with people and actually just hashing it out.
Awesome. Okay. So if you're watching this, listening to this, and you're interested, please reach out to Nida at Caravan Tales. And she set her email, right? So I reach out to her if you have questions. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with us, Nida, or anything that I didn't cover in this discussion today?
Yeah, I would just say thank you again for the opportunity to talk more about Caravan Tales. And I'm hoping that anyone who has ever considered joining a Caravan Tales adventure, hopefully this gives you a little bit more background knowledge of what led to the decision of creating the company, what the company stands for. And again, it's open to my brothers and sisters all over the world. And I'm always happy to receive any messages and get on a chat with you all. So happy to be here and talk all about this company.
Alhamdulillah. That's great. I'm happy to share this opportunity with you to share about Caravan Tales. So thank you for taking the opportunity and sharing your journey with us today. So in your professional journey, insights will definitely resonate with the listeners, as it has for me. And I know it will inspire so many people in the future, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair, Nida. And to our listeners, we'll see you again next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for listening to the Tread a Path podcast. You can find all the resources our guests mentioned in the Tread a Path archive in our website, coffeeproductions.com, along with the links to connect with our guest speakers. If today's conversation inspired you or helped you in your own professional journey, we'd love to hear from you. So please leave us a review, share the episode with someone who might benefit, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. May your treaded path be blessed and full of wisdom. Assalamu alaikum.